Hi, Charlie.
Hi guys, how are you?
Good. Great to have you back. You want to use the vid cam? I want to make sure you're still as handsome as you were last time. And don't worry, we don't have a bromance going. It's just
Okay,
respect.
not that there's anything wrong with that.
Okay. Thanks, Charlie. So, you
If you
know,
need, if you need, we can all leave and let the two of you.
anyway, for those of you who don't know, and Charlie's reputation precedes him normally wherever he goes, but Charlie's a contributing editor on Fox Business, and he has a column and he writes articles for the New York Post. You're going to show your mug and use the camera here today, Charlie?
How do I do that?
You just see where it says video? There's a camera there at the bottom.
Oh, I mean that word video. There we
go.
Video.
Yeah, it's a hint.
Oh, here's where it's a problem.
Oh, okay. All right, there you go.
All right.
All right, Charlie. God, so much is going on with this transition of power. I'm not going to talk about the impeachment. I know it's not your beat. It was probably foregone conclusion before it started. But, something that you wrote probably a month ago, where you said that DA tax probes on Trump is going to be miserable for him, which I can understand. But you also said it's going to be miserable for the rest of the country. And, I would think that, as divided as the country is, that, a lot of people would enjoy seeing them twisting in, with some type of IRS problem, or finally having to be, called on the carpet. So why would the rest of America be miserable about that?
Well, I mean, we're a heavily divided country. 74 million people voted for him. Right. A lot of people voted against him. I do think there's a need to move on, and I think one of the big things that do we really want to go through months and months of a gut wrenching thing with Donald Trump? Now, if he broke the law clearly, unequivocally, let the chips fall where they may. But even this impeachment trial, listen, I've been very critical of the president at times. Not so much on policy, but on personal, the way he comported himself. I've always had problems with that. If you go back over on the internet, you'll see this famous argument I had with people at Fox during the show Outnumbered, where I literally said to the other guests, I said, listen, he's the way he acts at these rallies, and this was back in 2016, by the way. Wasn't just yesterday. I said the way he acts at these rallies is problematic, and he's inciting violence. I actually said that. So I'm not a fan of his, but I think that the country, if in a perfect world we move on and we focus our attention on getting needles in people's arms and getting people out and getting people like me spending on vacation. So
I got my first vaccine yesterday, Charlie.
Yeah, I wish I can get it. My wife, who's a cancer
just too
survivor,
young.
I know. Well, I'm not a cancer survivor either. My wife, who can get hers very shortly, and hopefully I can get mine in April, and I can be in somewhere in Vegas.
All right. Let's move on to the economy. Okay. And what's interesting is everything's going up, Charlie. You didn't have to be a genius. You could throw a dart. Housing has exploded, took out the pre-crisis highs in many areas of the country. You have marijuana stocks, commodities are going. I mean, people use the 2000.com analogy, but even back then, Charlie, it was mainly .com. Commodities were in a bear market. It was really one big show, and now it's everything. You could be long the world, and most asset classes are rewarding people, not just rewarding them, but giving them windfall profits. In real estate, I've heard recently, people are making cash offers over the market, over the offer, and still there's bidding wars, and they can't close on a housing deal. So you wrote that housing might be behind the 2008 ball. And I believe you were talking about the governmental agencies like Fannie and Freddie,
Right.
that there's still, ghosts from the past. I still don't know what happened to all that bad derivative paper from 2008. What garbage can
I
they're
think
holding?
the Fed holds it, doesn't it?
I have no idea. All I know is it's like it never happened. Just like, one time in my life, Charlie, I was a fiscal conservative. Well, forget about that. I mean, how can you be a fiscal conservative anymore in this type of environment that we're in? It's just, the days of Ross Perot and trying to keep the country's books straight. That went out the window starting in 2000. So what could derail this huge bull market that we have going in housing? Because that's a very important part of everyone's net worth.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what derailed it the last time was the fact that it just became so clear that people couldn't pay back their loans. I mean, that became that forget about whether Wall Street was responsible for derivatives and all this stuff. Yes, that made it easier for that juiced the market in many ways. But it came down to the fact that housing was became so expensive because there was so much free money and ways that people can buy a house that they couldn't afford. That when at some point they couldn't afford it. So if you were making 50 grand and you bought a house for $400,000, you just couldn't afford those payments, particularly if you took out one of those
negative
mortgages. Yeah, all that sort of crazy stuff that was going down. Gone was the day were the days. Like, listen, when I bought my house, when did I buy my house? I'm not going to give you every example, but I did put 30% down, and I was a working stiff journalist, not a guy who made a few bucks on TV. But I saved. It was my first book money. And I learned from my old man who bought his first house. We lived in an apartment in the Bronx, and we moved to Westchester. He bought his first house, I believe it was for $16,000, and he put 20% down. Now back then, as you know, 20% of 16,000 is not a tremendous amount of money, but it was a lot of money for him. I think he borrowed half of it from my grandmother, and then he paid her back, and it was a big thing. But he put 20% down. Yeah. Okay. On a $16,000 house. People didn't do that then. And now I think the lending standards are creeping back in that area. And on top of that, there's a lot of free money for rich people. What's fascinating about this gets back to the Biden budget. What's so fascinating about this $1.9 trillion package, there's so much stuff in there that's not needed. I mean, if you were telling me he's spending $1.9 trillion to give money to people who like hospitality people and bartenders, restaurateurs that are just out of business, that need the cash, okay, all for it. Yeah. If you were telling me he's whacking it between that and getting vaccines to people, which, by the way, the vaccine is probably the best stimulus package you can have, I would be all for it. But there's a lot of stuff in here. There's rewarding of states that, just summarily shut things down, like New York State. I tweeted something out early on that New York State was facing, like a $50 billion budget deficit with the MTA and everything. I remember some clown from Bloomberg, kind of laughing at me. Oh boy, that's a lot of money. Are you sure you're right? And it came out today at $63 billion. The reason why that is because New York did very harsh lockdowns. It didn't really manage this thing. It closed its economy totally. Florida didn't do that. And by the way, the rates of infection of COVID are not like that much different, we should point out. So my point is that why are we rewarding states that didn't manage that? By the way, anybody can close everything down. Gavin Newsom closed down outdoor dining in California. I live 60 degrees. Oh, it's just insane. Yeah. I mean, outdoor dining. So,
I could make a tuna sandwich and walk outside, Charlie, and have outside dining.
Yes, that's outdoor dining. You just point to the absurdity of it. I mean, why should we be like some guy in Florida, some taxpayer in Florida, be subsidizing Gavin Newsom for not managing the crisis, or Andrew Cuomo? And I think that's in the budget. Also, like,
or how about Robert De Niro receiving those forgivable loans? I mean, there are a lot of very wealthy people that went for those forgivable loans that
oh yeah,
probably that didn't need them. I mean, there has to be some
brokers,
kind of
brokerage teams. Think about it this way: brokerage. If you were an independent financial advisor, so I cover this space, so I know a little bit about it. During this time, you did okay, just because the Fed was. I know the market went down to 18,000, but the Fed was printing money and doing all this stuff. That was a subsidy to your business. From monetary policy was a subsidy to your business. On top of that, you could apply for one of these PPP loans, whatever they're called. And you know, why should you be given that? Why should a guy who makes $100,000 a year, you know, through this whole crisis, his lifestyle has not been impacted because he can work from home. He's not out of a job. Get some free money, which I hear that the free money goes to people that, you know, I heard as much as $300,000 families with a combined 300. I mean, why? They're working.
I don't
they're
get it.
Saving like crazy because they don't have to go to work. They could do this sort of stuff. I mean, I'm just saying that it's there's no rationale for some of this, and at some point, you know, the piper gets paid. You know what I'm saying? You know, will we get inflation? You know, I don't know. I kind of think at some point when everybody's free, you know, we're going to be spending like crazy. This money goes somewhere and causes some economic dislocation, and maybe that's the trigger for the market to change course.
Well, I think the easiest thing for the sacrificial lamb in this cycle will be the dollar. Because it can make depression invisible and make everything go up in nominal terms because the dollar's depreciating.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Yeah, so I also want to talk about the new landscape. I don't even remember the name of the past SEC chairman, but Gary Gensler. Okay. He made very little news, didn't he, over the last 4 years? Well, Gary Gensler is a well-known entity, you know, chairs the CFTC. And in one of your articles, you made a point that although he came out of Goldman and, you know, the typical banker mentality, that he's gone through a metamorphosis where he's embraced Senator Warren's type of philosophy and Janet Yellen. And with all this action going on with GameStop and Reddit, and we'll get to that, and Robinhood, do you think he's going to be a hard taskmaster and try and calm down the market? I'm even hearing things. A friend of mine told me that some congressmen are discussing a day trade tax. There's going to be all of this stuff out there, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to get an airing. I mean, when you have a seminal event like this GameStop frenzy, that's a shorthand for what happened over the last month. I mean, you're always going to get people looking at it and reacting to it, and now because the levers of power have moved sharply to the left. If you think about it, you have you have pro-regulation people in all the congressional committees. I mean, next week, Maxine Waters is going to be chairing a committee that is looking at GameStop. I mean, she's one of the most progressive members of Congress. So you're going to have that. You have Gary Gensler as the SEC chair. Hey, but Gary Gensler's a really smart guy. You know, but you know, he's just look at what Warren has said about him. She basically said he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Biden himself, you know, never really an anti-Wall Street guy, but he has to play to the left of the party, the AOC types. So you have that, you know, and then Elizabeth Warren is in a position of power now. I mean, the one of the most progressive politicians in the country is on the Senate Finance Committee, I believe. Check me on that, but she's a ranking member.
Well, you have to admit, though, that Warren was on top of things in 2008 about what the dangers were with the derivative market and housing market.
I covered that a lot. I mean, listen, she talked a good game. I mean, Larry Kudlow, my good friend and soon to be colleague at Fox. We were at CNBC at the time, and he had her on regularly. Yeah, she was. I still don't think derivatives were the reason why we had a financial crisis. There was a lot of reasons why we had a financial crisis, and I think the core reasons, easy money from the Fed and government intervention in the housing markets is something that she never called. And and
that started under Clinton pretty much. Then when he changed the tax laws, where could. Yeah, go ahead.
It was Clinton. It started under Clinton on the tax side. It started under Clinton on prodding Fannie and Freddie to expand their portfolio. A HUD secretary named Henry Cisneros and another HUD secretary named Andrew Cuomo. And by the way, George Bush never changed it, and I can't remember who his HUD secretaries were kind of less flamboyant, but they were doing the same stuff. And then Fed monetary policy, those were the drivers, and then throw in Wall Street, of course that lights the fuse, and that's what happened. But I don't remember Elizabeth Warren commenting about that stuff. She was very quiet. And by the way, Wall Street's always easy to pick on, isn't it? I mean, anybody can beat up on a bank.
Yeah. It's easy to pick on because that's where the money is.
Yeah. They're evil and allegedly evil, and it's
we're all a bunch of hucksters, Charlie.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like politicians aren't hucksters. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Why did what was the motivation for Steve Cohen to reopen a hedge fund after the GameStop incident?
Yeah, Bloomberg ripped off my story on that. I was a little perturbed. Let's
go to the office, Charlie. Me and you. They'll sweat a little bit.
Yeah. No, I have. By the way, I have a lot of friends there, and they looked for a way to try to not give me credit. I do that with them too. So I'm grousing here. Well, we just to make a point is, I broke the story that he opened his hedge fund amid the fact that after he took a huge loss in Melvin Capital, which was the one hedge fund that almost went under from the GameStop frenzy, because it was in the middle of a short squeeze. He took a huge loss because he was a big investor in that. I mean, he had a ton of money in that. I mean, .72, which he runs right now, had a ton of money in Melvin. On top of that, he threw him I think a $750 million lifeline. I checked my numbers on that. It was, he and Citadel put money into the fund. And then right after that, I got a call from my sources at the brokerage firms that he was opening up. Like, for example, Morgan Stanley got I think it was $100 million window. And in Bloomberg, in trying not to cite me 2 days later, said that he raised about $1 billion for his fund. And Steve's people told me he's doing it because he thought now was a good time to do it. It has nothing to do with the Melvin thing. You can believe that, or you can believe the logic, which is, he had people wanting to get in the fund, and now's the time that he needed it because he took a hit on Melvin.
Does he do a lot? Is he known for playing the short side of equities? Is he known for being a bear?
They all do.
All right. Well, maybe that's one of the reasons. I mean, you have.
He was short. No, but he was short via his investment in Melvin, who was short those stocks.
Okay, so maybe he's seen everything that's happened with marijuana stocks, with everything, Charlie. You name an asset class or sector, hard to find a bear.
I mean, I've written a lot about Steve Cohen over the years. I wrote a book, Circle of Friends, about how the government tried and ultimately failed to nail him on insider trading. Right. He's a brilliant trader. Okay. And he's a good businessman. And, we should point out that the government never charged him with insider trading. They charged his firm. They believed it was a hotbed of insider trading, so they closed it down, but they never got him. And insider trading is a very difficult thing to prove. And, it's more than just trading on information that's not public. It's you got to show that you stole the information. There's a lot of steps involved for good reason, because there's something called the First Amendment. We all go out there and research stuff. There are very fine lines between people researching and stealing information. There's a difference between information flowing 5 steps down to me and me making a trade, and me pulling a Bud Fox, disguising myself as a janitor, going into some law office and stealing the papers. That's
Right.
and so Steve, they never nailed Steve on that. So he gets a bad rep sometimes on insider trading issues, but he's a smart trader. And I'm sure I don't know what his positions are. He doesn't, necessarily, announce them. He's one guy that doesn't announce what he's doing. But
maybe the Bobby Axelrod character was kind of formed on Steve Cohen. What do you think? Who's the closest thing to Bobby Axelrod?
It's not even. Like I said, I know the guy who they theoretically modeled Wax over. Remember, his number 2,
right?
Nothing like that guy. I mean, the Wax guy is the number 2 for Axelrod, is a guy that does drugs and who knows what. The guy that at S.A.C., who was Steve's number 2 for a long time, is a good looking big weightlifter.
Okay,
doesn't do any of
Hollywood,
Yes.
Charlie. All right, I want to get to what really is a massive movement. So, the pandemic, it's hard for me to believe that the public has this type of muscle in the markets. I was trained, you always fade the public. They're always late to the party. They get long at the tops. They puke at the bottoms. So I want to talk about Reddit and these chat rooms becoming a new force in the market. So you say not me. And this was really, wasn't it because of the pandemic that people had to find something else to do? They couldn't bet on sports. There was nothing. And so they just gamified stock trading. And you think this has staying power, even if they have to go back to work?
If you Google my name and Robinhood, you'll see a column I wrote for the Post in I think it was August, where I said essentially that we're creating a situation between free money from the Fed, free money from the Treasury in these checks, shutdowns, limited sports. Back then it was limited. Right. So what are people going to do? They're going to do this, and it never ends well. We should point out that as much as some people got out of that GameStop trade, a lot didn't. Probably a lot of people probably bought at 500, and then lost all the money. I don't know what it's trading at today. I stopped. I think it's in the 50s now.
But I think they mainly lost option premium. So along the way, if they were buying calls, they were cleaning up.
You're right, and you're right, and that would hopefully that's what a lot of people did. Listen, I have no problem with this.
Power to the people.
I don't want to bail them out.
The hell with the algos and high frequency traders. Why not let the public be a force?
This is the free market. And by the way, one of the things I did tell Dan Gallagher, who's a friend of mine, who's the general counsel of Robinhood, when I did the column the first time, because he thought I was a little tough on them. I said, one of the things I think the problem with Robinhood is that it incentivizes, it turns this into a game a little bit too much. And I thought they stepped over the line. This is just personally. I don't think they stepped over the line legally, but I just think gamifying it is a problem because then you do really get this stupid money in there. But to be honest with you, I'm all for this. People want to trade, they want to talk on chat rooms, go for it. By the way, I seen something come up from the Forex gal. She goes, free market, Robinhood wouldn't let them trade. LOL. Here, let's just reality base this thing. Robinhood makes more money the more they trade. Right. Okay. The more they trade, they could sell more order flow to Citadel. Okay. The reason why Robinhood stopped the trading, is because they're not Morgan Stanley.
They didn't have the cap.
They have the capital for the settlement, and it's just it's so obvious. By the way, if these hearings focus on this, they're going to end in 10 minutes. These hearings next week. Like, tell us about your capital, and I'm sure Vlad Tenev is going to turn around and say
there is an alternative interpretation. There are some that say that the reason they capped it is because the same funds that actually buy the flow from them told them that unless you put a stop at this, that it makes us bleed, we're going to stop buying the flow from you.
Well, let me ask you this. If you saw who they sell the flow to, they sell 60% to Citadel, and they sell. There's a number. I think the rest of it goes largely to Virtu. Why would Virtu, give a shit about Melvin Capital?
Perhaps because people at this stage, as you very well, I mean, you've been interviewed now for 30 minutes. You've already mentioned 15 famous people that you're friends with or no. That
Right.
doesn't only apply to you. You know what I mean?
Wait. I'm not telling you mention 15 famous. First off, these aren't famous people. These are people.
No. I mean, but they are people in the same industry. You know what I mean?
People in the industry, right? And that I get paid to talk to people in the industry.
Yeah.
No. I'm not saying something bad about what you said. I mean, as you know, people in the industry, these people also know people in the industry. They know each other. So it might be like, I'm at a very tough spot. One day you might be there yourself. Please help out. You know what I mean?
It's possible. By the way, listen, anything is possible. We had a financial crisis in 2008. Donald Trump was president, and then what happened. I don't really think that Robinhood gives a shit about Citadel. It doesn't, and I don't think it cares about F.A.C.E. Capital. It could sell its order flow to anybody, and it's a valuable commodity, because if you're really worried about this whole process, study, and I think it's worth studying. People gaming the payment for order flow system. That's a legitimate thing to study. But the logic of the Robinhood bailing out Citadel just doesn't make it for me. It's possible. We should point out that it's one of the most easily detected scams in the world. They'd be idiot if that's the reason, they're gonna get their asses handed to them by Maxine Waters if that's the case. So that's probably not the case. And
let's look at the other side of the coin. Any regulations coming to these chat rooms like Reddit? Are they going to try and clamp down on that? I mean, does Wall Street embrace it? And do the regulators and the people in power now embrace the force of chat rooms?
Well, we have something called the First Amendment. I don't know. Wall Street and regulators may want to listen. We live in an era where you could be canceled at any time. The cancel culture is out there. These big tech companies control a lot of what is known as free speech over the internet. It's funny how they actually they both have protection from libelous speech, and they can monitor the speech. I don't quite get that. They have this Section 230 of the Communications Act where it's a safe harbor. So if someone puts on Twitter something nasty about me, that I'm a criminal, I can't sue Twitter for not taking that down, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That plus they monitor speech. So everything is, everything I guess is on the table. I will say this, it's going to be hard for them to just crack down on chat rooms. What is, there is a First Amendment. People say all sorts of shit when you walk on the street. You know what I'm saying? Right. You're going to crack down on everybody saying anything in a public forum. There are laws already on the books. If you manipulate a stock, if you pump and dump via chat rooms, you could be. That's if it's provable, which is a very difficult case. I was the first to report that the SEC was looking at a pump and dump market manipulation case, and now the Justice Department's in it. It's even more remote for the Justice Department to bring a case. These are
and it usually happens in lower tiered quality issues like bulletin board, pink sheet.
Oh yes.
I mean, that's the arena for it.
Yeah, so, it's stocks that are thinly traded that you can get. You can easily trace the pump and the dump, and also the. And probably the
dump is the CEO selling into the volume that he paid for to bring in. So I've seen that. I'd like to wrap it on this, Charlie, and I heard this story, and I don't consider myself a socialist at all. But the
Thank God.
story, yeah, the story is, during the pandemic, we were all, especially at the beginning, the run on toilet paper. The joke is that there was, a roll of toilet paper hidden in a pound of cocaine. Because toilet paper was so valuable. But, I look at the grocery stores and, all through this, they kept us going,
Yep.
and I had groceries delivered, and there were, the workers were there stocking the shelves and bagging it and ringing up the register. And Kroger, did pretty well during the pandemic. They had I think they made an extra $1 billion.
Right.
And why couldn't they have used that to pay their people combat pay, hazard pay, rather than stock buybacks? Does that make me a socialist, that I think they should have gone and rewarded people for keeping their business going and with the risks that they were taking every day to feed America?
Well, the people got paid, presumably. I would like higher wages. You remember, companies have fiduciary responsibilities not to their employees, but to their shareholders. And right.
Therefore,
and
buybacks.
By the way, if their business is going through the roof, they have to hire more, and they presumably have to pay more to attract workers. That's the way I think it should work. That's called capitalism. I have a problem with, the government coming in and, saying, oh, you can't buy back stocks, can't do this, can't do that.
Well, then don't you have a problem with the airlines having used all the profits for buybacks and then coming hat in hand with COVID and saying, bail us out?
Yeah, I do have a problem with that. There should be listen, if you're there should be strings attached for government bailouts of companies. Okay, I have no problem with that. Where I have problems is government telling, the heavy hand of government telling a company how to manage its finances.
Right.
Okay. But here's the thing. People. I had a running argument with people about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the two general GSEs, government-sponsored enterprises.
Yeah.
And because a lot of the shareholders said, the government took them over and stole and after even getting paid back, kept sucking in the profits. And these are private companies. And I will say, well, let's be real clear. First off, they were never really private companies. They were both created by Congress, right? Remember, they were known as GSEs because they had some nominal backing of the federal government. They borrowed at rates that were treasury rates. So investors thought they were part of the federal government. Then they get bailed out by the government. Once you get bailed out, if you want this government assistance, all bets are off if you're a shareholder, as far as I'm concerned. Then that's where your rights, and the Supreme Court's going to rule on this. I don't know where they may disagree with what I'm saying, but I'm using my logic. Once you take bailout money, it's open season on you. But before that, I think companies should be able to operate as companies,
Okay. All right. Well, Charlie, I always ask people, what's your most valuable currency? And they'll say, well, it's a euro, it's a dollar, it's gold, it's Bitcoin. But to me, our most valuable currency is time, because money comes and goes. Time is gone forever. Thanks for spending some of your most valuable currency with us this morning, Charlie. It was great having a conversation with you, buddy.
Lot of fun. Thank you.
All right. Good hunting. And I hope next time we talk that you've been inoculated at least once.
I hope so.
All right,
too.
partner. All right. So that's a wrap. Charlie Gasparino, everybody. And everyone have a great weekend. Remember, don't just count your chips and your cash and your shares. Count your blessings. And we'll see you all Monday. Adios.